They abandoned a poor girl in a sack to die, but the cowboy's daughter whispered, "Papa, she's Mama." The wind howled across the Wyoming plains, kicking up dust that stung like 1,000 tiny needles. In the fading light of dusk, a tattered sack lay discarded by the side of a dirt road, its contents stirring faintly as if pleading for notice. Inside was Ellie, a girl no older than 10, her frail body curled tight against the cold. Her parents, driven by desperation and shame, had left her there, convinced the world had no place for another hungry mouth. Ellie's breaths were shallow, her hope thinner still, but her heart clung to a stubborn spark of life. She didn't know that a mile away, a cowboy named Amos and his daughter Lila were riding home under a sky bruised with stars. Amos was a man carved from the land itself, calloused hands, sun-worn face, and a heart that had hardened after losing his wife, Clara, to fever 3 years prior. Lila, only 8, rode beside him on her pony, her braid bouncing with each step. She had her mother's eyes, bright and searching, always finding beauty in the broken. As they neared the road, Lila's pony snorted, its ears twitching toward the sack. "Papa, what's that?" she asked, pointing. Amos squinted, assuming it was just another bundle of trash left by passing drifters. But Lila's gaze held steady, her small voice insistent. "It moved, Papa. Something's alive." Dismounting, Amos approached cautiously, his boots crunching on gravel. The sack twitched again and a faint whimper escaped. His heart lurched, a sound too human, too fragile. He knelt, slicing the rope with his pocket knife, and peeled back the coarse fabric. There lay Ellie, her face pale, her lips cracked, her eyes wide with fear and something else, resignation. Amos froze, his breath catching. She was just a child, abandoned like refuse. Lila gasped, clutching her father's arm. "Papa, she's hurt," she whispered, her voice trembling with urgency. Amos lifted Ellie gently, her weight no heavier than a lamb, and carried her to his horse. He didn't know her story, but he knew no soul deserved this. At their small ranch, Amos laid Ellie on a cot by the fire. Layla hovered close, fetching water and a blanket, her small hands moving with purpose. Ellie stirred, sipping the water Lila offered, her eyes darting between father and daughter. She hadn't spoken yet, too weak, too scared. Amos's mind raced. Who could do this to a child? He thought of the town, 20 miles off, where folks whispered of families broken by poverty, of children left to fate when hope ran dry. He'd seen cruelty before, but this cut deeper, stirring memories of Clara's kindness, her belief that no one was beyond saving. Lila sat beside Ellie, brushing a strand of matted hair from the girl's face. "You're safe now," she said softly, as if she'd known Ellie forever. Amos watched, his chest tight. Lila had always been his light, but now she shone brighter, her compassion a mirror of her mother's. He stoked the fire, wrestling with what came next. They couldn't keep her, could they? He was a widower, barely scraping by. Yet the thought of turning Ellie over to the orphanage in town, a place known for cold walls and colder hearts, made his stomach churn. The next morning, Ellie spoke for the first time, her voice a hoarse whisper. "They didn't want me," she said, staring at the floor. "Said I was too much." Amos's jaw clenched. He knew that kind of pain, being cast aside, deemed worthless. Lila, sitting cross-legged beside Ellie, reached for her hand. "You're not too much," she said fiercely. "You're just right." Amos marveled at his daughter's certainty, her ability to see worth where others saw none. But it was later that day, as the girls played quietly in the yard, that Lila's words undid him. "Papa," she called, running to him as he mended a fence. Her face was alight, her voice low but sure. "She's Mama." Amos stopped, hammer in hand, his breath catching. "What did you say, darlin'?" Lila's eyes sparkled with a knowing beyond her years. "Ellie, she's like Mama. She needs us, like Mama needed us when she was sick. We can't let her go." The words pierced Amos, unearthing memories of Clara, her laughter, her warmth, her insistence on helping anyone in need. He'd failed Clara in the end, unable to save her. But this girl, this moment felt like a second chance. That night, Amos sat by Ellie's cot, watching her sleep. Her face, softened by rest, looked eerily like Clara's in the firelight. He thought of Lila's words, the way they'd settled into his bones. He'd always believed kindness was a luxury, something you gave when you had enough to spare. But Lila saw it differently. Kindness was a necessity, a fire to keep burning no matter how scarce the fuel. He realized then that Ellie wasn't just a stranger. She was a test, a chance to be the man Clara had believed him to be. The days that followed were not easy. Ellie was skittish, flinching at loud noises, hoarding scraps of food as if they'd vanish. Amos and Lila were patient, teaching her to trust, to laugh. Lila shared her clothes, her toys, her stories of Clara, weaving Ellie into their world. The townsfolk whispered when Amos brought Ellie to church, their eyes sharp with judgment. Another mouth to feed, they muttered. He's a fool. But Amos stood tall, Lila's hand in one of his, Ellie's in the other. He didn't care what they thought. He was learning slowly that family wasn't just blood. It was choice. The turning point came one evening, weeks later, as a storm rolled over the plains. Thunder shook the house, and Ellie, trembling, crawled into Lila's bed. Amos overheard them whispering, Ellie confessing her fear of being left again, Lila promising she'd never let that happen. You're my sister now, Lila said, her voice fierce and certain. Amos stood in the doorway unseen, his eyes burning. He saw Clara in that moment, not in Ellie's face, but in Lila's heart, in the way she gave love so freely. It was then he knew Ellie wasn't going anywhere. Months passed, and Ellie bloomed. She gained weight, her laughter filling the house. She helped Amos with chores, her small hands steady as she fed the chickens. Lila taught her to ride, the two girls galloping across the fields, their giggles carried by the wind. Amos watched them, his heart full in a way he hadn't thought possible since Clara's death. One night as he tucked them into bed, Ellie looked up at him, her eyes clear and bright. Can I call you Papa? She asked. Amos's throat tightened. He nodded, unable to speak, and kissed her forehead. The ranch, once quiet with grief, hummed with life. Amos realized that saving Ellie had saved him too. Lila's whispered words, "She's Mama," hadn't meant Ellie was Clara, but that she carried the same need, the same chance for love to heal. He'd chosen to answer that call, and in doing so found purpose. The world outside could be cruel, quick to discard the weak, but within these walls kindness reigned. It wasn't just about giving Ellie a home. It was about building one together, proving that even in the harshest places humanity could thrive. As the sun set over the plains, Amos stood on the porch, watching Lila and Ellie chase fireflies. Their laughter rose like a song, a reminder that love could grow where despair had once taken root. He thought of Clara, of her belief that every soul deserved a chance. You'd be proud, he whispered to the stars. And in that moment he knew they'd done more than save a girl. They'd shown the world what it meant to be human.